Well, welcome. I am going to be speaking to the topic of age gap dating, or what I call AGD, which is simply the acronym for age gap dating. In the West, in the modern West, it's become very, very normal for um, young men and young women uh, to have expectations, and these expectations are more placed on the female's side than they are on the male side. But the variance is not that huge, but parties of both groups have similar expectations. Um, in the West, particularly the developed West, there is this expectation that when you date and when you're in the dating marketplace, the difference between both sexes' ages should be either 0 or up to about 2. Therefore, what you find is that it's not unusual to hear young men and young women, particularly women, when asked what the ideal age would be for the man they would hope to date or marry. It's not unusual to hear them say they want the man to have the same age, but with so much more expectations. So you would hear a woman who is 25 say, I would like my ideal partner to be 25 or maybe up to 27, but I would want him to be able to provide to the same extent and to the same level as someone who is 10 years his senior or 15 years his senior. So what you find is that age gap dating in the West and beyond have, I guess, there are different expectations. If you go to the East or go to other parts of the world, in Africa, in India, the Middle East, in parts of Southern America, what you find is that age gap dating is the norm. The idea that you would date someone and marry someone at the same age as you are, you being the woman, is not considered to be a demonstration of sound judgment in a lot of these other locations. There are reasons for that. But let me start by explaining why, for you, the woman, age gap dating has to be taken more seriously. And more importantly, for you, the man, why age gap dating is not just something to be taken seriously, but it's essential. For women, it's a nice to have. For men, it's mandatory. To set the scene and to get the conversation started, let me lay out two sets of proposals. We make a mistake of thinking that the sexual marketplace is one place, one space. Not so. The sexual marketplace is split into two separate subsections. There is what we call the dating marketplace, and there is the relationship or the marriage marketplace. In the first marketplace, the needs of the participants, or the buyers and sellers, if you want to use that terminology, are quite different to those in the second marketplace. In addition to that, because their needs are different, they play by different rules. The game is skewed in a different way. For example, in the dating marketplace, men generally want sex. We date for the primary purpose of sex. That's a need we have, and we want that need satisfied. So for most men, dating simply refers to, in a colloquial word, having sex. Um, in the marriage marketplace, we go into such places for different reasons. We may want a family, we may want exclusivity, we may want to sign up to some form of an agreement, whether that be by state, or whether that be by church, or whether that be by cultural affiliations. But there's something we want beyond just sex. We want intimacy, we want affection, we want a stable base. We may even be looking for a helpmeet. So what you find is that in the first marketplace, because all we want and all we are really thinking about are our needs, we tend to think from the perspective of a zero-sum game, how we can win. Now, that does not mean that in the act of sex, both parties do not have the opportunity to have an orgasm. They both do, or they all do. The point being that you tend to put yourself first as you walk into the marketplace. No doubt there's a negotiation and an agreement of mutual exchange. So everything is done by consent. Both parties believe they are getting something, but one party believes, especially men, that if they don't get what they want, they've lost the game. But because the currency of exchange is usually either money, power, fame, influence, time, attention, poetry, whatever the woman wants, men understand the value of their time, so we calculate things in a zero-sum basis, the cost and benefit. And what we're looking for is the net benefit. We want to pay the least amount, or invest the least amount, or spend the least amount in order to get what we want. Once we've received what we want, we move to the next. In the marriage marketplace, it's more of a positive sum game. Recognizing that you're choosing a spouse, a partner, someone you will be with for a lifetime or a long time. You're looking for something that works for both parties. You're looking for an alignment of values, morals, principles, vision of the future, structure, aspirations, goals. You're looking for a consistent theme that connects both parties. Shared values, complementary skills. Therefore, it's a positive sum game. You're coming into the picture from the perspective of wanting to be dependent to some extent on the other, because there is something you need. So it's a positive game. Therefore, you're playing the long-term approach, you're thinking strategically, but you recognize that you do not want to have a victim, a prisoner, or someone who doesn't feel that they can express themselves. So you put your honest thoughts on the table, but you're happy to identify areas where a compromise might be needed, but not excessively. But you want to make sure you're not compromising as a lifestyle. Now, with that explanation, I can build on that by explaining how the age gap dating process works for both parts of the marketplace. I'm going to call the first marketplace, which is the dating marketplace, purely based on sex for men. I'm going to call that the reverse age gap dating approach. Now, here is the reason. Let me use a boy who is 20 and a girl who is 20. Both parts, both people, both parties are of similar age. The boy wants sex. The woman, on the other hand, might have other aspirations. There might be things that she wants other than just sex. You might find that because both parties have similar or are of similar age, the boy only has potential. He has nothing to exchange for what he wants, which is sex. The woman, on the other hand, is at the peak of her prime and the peak of her sexual market value. She's at the peak of a reproductive fertility value. She's at the peak of a non-sexual marketplace value, which are all of the parts she needs to get the best deal. So what you find is that at 20, her beauty is her currency, her youth is her currency, and her temperament is her currency. With that, she can exchange that for the highest quality of male that she can attract. But she's in the dating marketplace. The boy, on the other hand, would only be with the most attractive woman that he can afford, recognizing that men are primarily judged on economics and the ability to provide. Yes, there are women who want other things like looks. We get that. In any case, the both of them, what you find is that if you had 100 men of 20 years and 100 women of 20 years, about a third of the men who are, sometimes even more, depending on the country and the location, depending on the town, the city, the village, about a third, between 25%, a quarter, up to a third, 33.3% of those men in that group will not be sexually active. Most of them will be, or some of them will be virgins, most of them will not be sexually active. You will find most of those men are the ones who indulge in so much porn and any form of online way of satisfying their needs. Virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, online stimulations. The reason being that they have a need, they have I guess you might say a type, but they can't afford her because they have nothing. So they rely on simply some form of electronic way of meeting that stimulation in their imagination. Now what this means is that the woman effectively holds the balance of power. So it would be idiotic for most men at that age to want to date women in the same age group. You might even find women who are 19 and 18 may not have time for those men. The reason being that those women in that age group are getting attention from men in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and even late 30s. And these men have the resources to meet the women's requirements. What this means is that most men in that age group of 20 have to apply a reverse age gap dating. They want sex. They will not get sex from the highest caliber women of the same age group because those women are trying to consolidate on the most attractive men who are usually much older. So as a young man, you're supposed to be reverse dating, recognizing that the primary purpose of dating, the younger you are, primarily below 30, is simply sex. You're not looking to have a family, you're not looking to settle down, you're not looking for a spouse. Your focus between 18 years and 30 should be your goals, your dreams, your purpose, achieving your financial aspirations, and sticking and staying focused on education and work. So allow yourself to become something first. Relationships tend to kill people's dreams, whether you're a man or a woman. They steal your dreams. They abort your dreams prematurely. They kill your dreams. Whoever you are with in that relationship, sometimes by omission or by commission, plays a part. Therefore, young men should reverse age date, or men in the dating marketplace should apply that principle of recognizing that they should reverse age date the younger they are. The older they are, they should apply the normal standard age dating. So to make it simple, you're 20, you can't get women who are the most attractive, the 9s and the 10s who are 20. You reverse age date. You go for women who are approaching 30, 31, 32, up to 35. Those are women who were once 9s and 10s when they were 20, who have stayed in the marketplace too long, refusing to consolidate, and at 30, they have fewer prospects. They're still sexually active, They still want sex, but they can't get the commitment they need from high quality men or high caliber men. Those are the women younger men should date because they will get what they want, which is simply sex, at very little cost. Now, for men in the marketplace for marriage or relationship, the approach is different. And when I talk about AGD, I am mainly speaking to those in the relationship marketplace. Because if you are in the sexual marketplace looking just to date, it doesn't really matter the age of the person. Yes, you have preferences, but your preferences only come into play when there is abundance. Men will settle for anything. Most men will have sex with any woman who can have them, depending on how thirsty the men are. We go into a bar, we start with a standard of 10. The girl who is a 10 says no, we go down to 9. She says no, we go down to 6. We look at the time, it's about 2 a.m. The club closes or the bar closes at 3 in the morning. We go down to 4. We will go down, which is partly why the porn industry was created, because the guy walks into the bar and says, I can only date a woman who's a 9 or a 10. But he gets rejected, so much so that he gets to the end of the night and says, all that is left here is a 2 or a 1, and I can't let people see me walk out with this. I'll just go back home and watch porn. I can get to see and beat myself to ecstasy based on someone who online is a 10. In the relationship marketplace, age gap dating becomes very crucial, which is where I will focus the rest of today's session. Here are some things to keep in mind. It's not necessary for a man to age gap date. It's vital, it's fundamentally vital for you to age gap date. It's almost a must. There are a number of reasons. Number one is so that you come into your manhood. You're ready for what I call the responsibilities that come with being a husband, a father, or being someone in a relationship with. You need to mature first, emotionally, mentally. You need to be ready financially. You also need to be ready in terms of understanding how to fail, recognizing that you need to have failed a few times in life so you can appreciate what I call trivial failures, especially trivial failures as a husband, as a father, as a spouse. It's not unusual for men to take the path of least resistance. We have a very, very unique logical mind as men. We're cost-benefit calculators. Think about business. 9 out of 10 businesses will fail within the first 3 to 4 years. What that means is that most men are used to trying something, seeing failure, rejecting what we've seen, starting something new, rejecting it again after we've failed, picking up another. That behavior is translated and brought into relationships, which is very, very, can be fatal, especially for men, especially when you're in the marriage marketplace. When you're married, you have to knuckle down, you bite down on your gum shields. You take the punch, you fall on your back, you ensure you're looking upwards. You get knocked down 8 times, you get up 9 times. The point being, you have to have known how to take a punch. Fear comes in immediately. We fail as men, irrespective of your culture, your location. There's something that says you failed. But if you have the mindset that does not see that those who succeed are those who go from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm, then you might find that in your particular life and in your experiences, an opportunity which most people will consider to be too risky could be, in many ways, the point at which you transform and you bring forth something great and something good out of a painful experience. So I recommend age gap dating simply because most men are not ready for the dating relationship marketplace. We go in too early. Right, put it in a different way. There's what I call the bridge. The bridge is the time period between when you transition from the dating marketplace to the relationship marketplace. That's the bridge. The number is between 30 and 35. Now, I understand I've covered some of these principles in other videos, but let me take a step back and put it to you in a way that you can understand. But let me give you a formula first, or let me give what I call the gap, what the gap should be. I like to use numbers because I think numbers are things to remember. You can disagree with the number, but at least you can remember what that number says and what it stands for. My number is between 5 and 10. The gap. The number of years that you should allow yourself as a man as the gap between yourself and your chosen spouse should be between 5 and 10 years. And I will explain where that has come from. And I would hope you would agree to the logic behind that number. Now, forgive me, I'm going to go fast because it's a long explanation, but it's a necessary explanation. Most men are emancipated at age 18, you become an adult. Luckily, it's the same time when most of us go to college or university, depending on where you live. 18 to 22 is the period, 4 years, and you're graduated. But for most men, sometimes that goes into 23, depending on whether you've done a 5-year course. So 18 to 23 is education. At 23, you find yourself usually in a position where you're about to move into the work environment. You're going into the world now to serve. The focus should always be about recognizing that you know absolutely nothing. Everything you've learned in school for 5 years or 4 years has just been theory. Now, Yogi Berra, depending on how you pronounce his name, says that in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. But in practice, there is. You spend 4 or 5 years learning how to theorize on things within safe boundaries. When you go into the work environment, you get to unlearn, learn, and relearn. Some of the things and the theories you've been taught are outdated, and so you're learning new things. So you go into what I call your apprentice period. You're trying to learn under a master. For most men, it takes about 10,000 hours to achieve mastery at anything. 10,000 hours, assuming 2,000 work hours per year, would mean you need 5 years. So from 23, you need 5 years. Now we know that men, generally speaking, we lack structure the younger we are. We lack vision the younger we are. We're distracted easily the younger we are. So we don't go through our journey in a straight line. We squiggle, we move around. I like to apply what I call a margin of safety, a margin for error of 20% to say, he'll bounce around a few times. He'll start a job and say, I don't like the structure, and he would change jobs, and he'll change jobs after 7-8 months. And eventually he will stay at one place. So let's allow you 20% of the overall time it needs for you to become proficient. So 10,000 hours plus 20% will take you from 10,000 to 12,000 hours. Divide by 2,000 hours per year, that's 6 years. Now, a lot of men also do something interesting, especially in the United Kingdom. They travel. They usually travel as soon as they graduate from university or some way in between. They take a gap year. So 23 plus 6 years is 29, plus one extra year for your gap year is 30. At 30, you have achieved some level of mastery in a skill, in a talent you've acquired through the opportunities provided by a company or other people, people who've been pouring into you all of the wisdom and knowledge they have to make you a better man. But you've been doing that within the security of a job, the safety of a salary, the comfort of knowing that you have something to go home to every single day. At 30, you've arrived at the bridge. You're not ready yet. Although you've acquired knowledge, skills, developed good attitudes, hopefully explored and developed a philosophy of life, the one thing you haven't really done is failed. The bridge is what I call the bridge of failure. The time it needs and you need to allow yourself to then move from security to freedom, to explore that part of you, that calling you had at a young age, but which you couldn't explore because you had a structure of a work environment. I give you 5 years to pursue that dream, that goal, that aspiration, start that business, fulfill that calling, that passion, that obsession you have, which will come with failure. You see, your purpose is seldom at your workplace. Your workplace is usually the preparation, you might say, station for your ultimate destination. Your work allows you to practice at other people's expense. Your purpose is then put before you for you to then explore how you can understand your why, your reason for being. That will come with failure. The 5 years, which is the bridge, is the time period that it takes for most men to actually fail enough or build something that is of significance. The 5 years is half the time it requires you to become a master in anything. So you've taken a number of years to develop a skill, but you've been learning all of that by the involvement of other people. Now, when you start a business, that 5 years gives you time not just to try something new, but also gives you time to understand yourself as a man, what you like, what you don't. Now, the one thing I haven't said, and I should, is between 18 and 30, my recommendation to young men is you shouldn't be in a relationship, a serious relationship. That should be out of the question completely. If you want to, yes, have a few plates spinning, but your focus should always be about your future. I give reasons for that, one of which is that the responsibilities that come with exploring fatherhood, marriage, even sex, sometimes the risks are asymmetric and skewed negatively, meaning something could go wrong, and the first thing that is sacrificed is your dream, your financial freedom, your destination is sacrificed because of the feelings and emotions of other people. So you should be stoic in your dating approach. You want to have a good time, you want to have fun, you will be a nice companion for fun, but you will not be the only companion for fun. In many ways, at the end of the night, she has to leave. She doesn't get to stay over, she doesn't get to nest, she doesn't get to fall in love, and you're not falling in love. The only person you're falling in love with, or the only thing you're falling in love with, is your future. You fall in love with the man you can become, and you stick to that man through thick and thin. So at 30, you start the 5-year process of failure. That allows you to take a few knocks in the chin and get punched around, so that by 35, 5 years, you've actually come to the point, which is what I call the tail of the bridge. You started at the head, you're now at the tail. You can reverse it if you wish. You start at the tail, you get to the head. Doesn't really matter. The point being that you are on the other side of the bridge. You failed. You've been through your Garden of Gethsemane. The scales have fallen off your eyes. You understand that you're no longer Saul, you're now Paul. In many ways, the things you used to love, chasing women around, not being committed, you can say, I now hate. And the things I used to hate, being settled down, being a good father, being a husband, being dependable, being a rock, I now love. It's a role reversal because you've had the time to develop yourself and you've played the field. Now you're ready for dating. Now, this is when age gap dating comes into the picture. What should it be? Now, here is my advice. It should be between 5 years and 10 years. I like the median number, which is 7.5 years. Usually, very safe place. The reason being that if it's too far away, if it's 12, 13, 14, 15, your similarities, your interest will vary, and it becomes very hard to have a sustaining relationship with someone who is 20. Let's say at 35, you decide to date someone who is 15 years your junior. Then she'll be 20. She's a baby. Now, her sexual market value is the highest. She's at the peak of her prime. She's attractive, yes. But you're 35. You're thinking about settling down. She's thinking about hot girl summer, having fun, and enjoying life. She's also thinking about her goals and dreams. Now, the reason I like 5 to 7 years is for a number of reasons. Sorry, 5 to 10 years is a number of reasons. The minimum being 5, you've had 5 years of failure. So when the relationship starts, you're more of the teacher. You guide her, you nurture her, you're willing to provide and protect for her. You take on the roles of the 6 P's: provision, protection, prayer, professing, and patience. You're playing all the roles that are needed because you're off, use the word, you're off age. 5 years minimum. 7.5 years is the median between both, because although 10 is more, it's a safer place. You have to be careful. If you were getting married at 30, I would be happy with 10 years. But I wouldn't recommend you, the man, get married at 30 because she will be 20. And there are a number of reasons why I would not accept that from you. I've spoken about men, and I've spoken about the journey of men. The principles apply for women as well. I disagree very strongly with a lot of positions where people say a woman's role should be in the family and the family alone. That at 22, which is the peak of her value, which I agree, 18 to 23, a woman's peak, you're still a baby at 20. But also, if you were to follow my recommendations, which will be similar to the men's, 18 to 23, education. Women's, your purpose in life, forget what people say. A lot of people who say that have very little understanding of either theology, biology, have very little understanding about sociology. They have very little understanding about the power of the imagination. They haven't studied enough to understand what drives us as human beings. A lot of people say, and men will say, well, your purpose should be your man. That's just wrong. It's not biblically correct. It's not correct in any way or form, in any theological setting. And many people conflate the word be fruitful and multiply as procreating. The one thing most people do not understand is that the same commandment, the same instruction rather, was given to the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. They were also told, be fruitful and multiply. The point was not to reproduce alone. The point was that be fruitful, meaning bring from you the gifts, the talents, the skills, the purpose that has been nurtured in you. Take that seed you have, put it in the soil and produce more. Physically, from a relational sense, yes, a family could be important. But also, the most important reason for your being is to understand your why. Your why is not in another person. Your why is in yourself. It's the greatness within you that wants to come forth into the world and leave a seed or plant a tree for other people that haven't been born yet. There's something you're trying to be fruitful into. You want to bring into the world everything stored within you. That is what it means to be fruitful. Multiply means take that fruit that you've then created and transfer that into reaching out to other people. So this conversation I'm having with you is a form of multiplication. I'm trying to provide a way for you to have the opportunity to infer from what I'm saying, which means, who knows, maybe you come to your Jesus moment and you say, aha, I get it now. I've taken my intelligence, I've combined it with Mensa's words, and I can see a little bit further than I could see before. That is being fruitful and multiplying. Now, whether that comes in a form of business, education, motivation, inspiration, teaching, providing support, being philanthropic, or even becoming a mother or father, all of those form part of the whole process of bringing yourself into the world. It's not just one. So I disagree strongly with women who are being encouraged that they should settle down very early. I understand, because I espouse it, that your sexual market value, your reproductive value, your non-sexual market value is the highest the younger you are. But you have to juxtapose that with the spirit within you and what that spirit wants to do and what that spirit wants to become. The traditional gender roles and family structure are not what they used to be. I have to recognize that. You have to recognize that. So I put women through the same prism that I put men, as follows, my tenets. 18 to 23, education. Sometimes 18 to 22. Women generally choose courses that are shorter, 4 years. And they have 1 year, if they finish at 22, 1 year to travel, see the world, do things, fail, explore. That brings you to 23. At 23, I applied the same 5 years to achieve 10,000 hours of practice and mastery and improvement, like I do the men, which means you have between 23 and 27 to have achieved your dream, become successful in something, achieve something in your life. Come into the world knowing that you're not just one person. Women struggle a lot because they do not allow themselves to bring to the world their greatness before they are put on, or they put on the cloak of motherhood or wife. If you're a woman, I hope there's something you keep in mind. Whatever defines you also limits you, or whatever you were defined by places a limitation on you, which is why the books of antiquities and biblical stories, and you read the Quran or you read the Jewish books, the Torah or the Pentateuch, there was one thing that stood out amongst all of those books. Even if you go to Buddhism or Taoism, something connects all of them, which is the idea that of the word I am, meaning God is, or whatever you define God as, meaning in all of the stories, there was always something consistent, which was the early Christian church, the Jews, the Muslims, understood the concept that something cannot be limited to one definition. So when Moses would say, well, who would I tell them has sent me? And the response was, I am. Which is why you can say, I am a husband. I am a businesswoman. I am successful. I am, an entrepreneur. Whatever you put after I am, you become. But you have to be careful not to stay in that place. Women these days are being conditioned to only take one I am, usually mother, or wife. That is not enough. So much so that I have seen women who are married, who would be invited to opportunities where they can meet other people in respectable settings. Sometimes social settings, come to the pub, come to a bar, meet at a friend's house. And their response are normally, well, I can't do that, I'm married now. As though marriage has become a prison for you to explore who you used to be. So my approach and my tenet is to say, no, become someone first. Before you start that journey of being a wife and motherhood, become someone so you have a sense of identity that is not hidden in a man. Achieve something. At 27, you're ready. You're ready to embrace the world. You're ready to take on that leap towards a serious relationship. Prior to 27, play the same game as men. Have a few plates spinning. You can date multiple people without having sex with them. Keep your body count low because that is very important. Don't get married, certainly before 28, 27. Don't have a baby for anyone before 27. Don't move in with a man and have him have the joy of your presence and your intellect and your greatness, and have you serve him like a husband without paying the price. Don't do that. Wait until 27. Achieve your 10,000 hours of practice. Attain mastery in something, and then you can decide, I'm ready to be a mother, because what that means is that you always have something to come back to. Should you decide to transition from motherhood or active motherhood to combining motherhood with also being entrepreneurial. Say, for example, once your children get to school age. The point of all of this explanation is to piece together the recommendation on age gap dating for the man and see how it fits very nicely with the woman. At 35, I say to you, the man, you're ready. Now go out to the world and see if you can find for yourself the right woman. So you start at 35. Now, I said I like the median age for what I call AGD, age gap dating, which is 7.5 years. Between 5 years up to 10 years, ideal, 7.5, perfect. At 35, if you were to subtract 7.5 years from 35, or in this case, let's say you start, for whatever reason, at 35 and 6 months, and you subtract 7.5 years from your age, the number, guess what? It's a woman who is just ready. I mean, she's just ready for you. She's 27 or 27.5. You start at 35, you take out 7.5 years, she's 27.5. You start at 35.5, she's 28. Both of you are ready. So both of you come to the table with a sense of awe for what the other person has achieved, with a sense of respect, recognizing that both of you can be independent, financially, emotionally. You can be independent, but you choose to be dependent. You bring together your complementary skills and your shared values, and you forge or form a family, a relationship that is suitable to both of you and what you've negotiated. It becomes a beautiful experience. The key thing though, the woman respects you because obviously you have 7.5 years ahead of her, which you invested wisely. You failed. You have the wealth, the education, the experience to lead her across the paths of righteousness, to lead her through the wilderness safely. There is nothing as weak as a man who, let me rephrase this, so that it's not too judgmental of men. There have been times in my particular life, and let me use myself as a good example, where someone has said to me in a relational setting, I couldn't have done this without you. And I'm not talking about something trivial. I'm talking about the fact that life is about suffering. You want to go through the wilderness of life, recognizing it's like a jungle, but you don't want to go through that process scared. You want to be able to embrace the adventure, recognize where there are waterfalls and exciting things, but recognize also that you might be stung by a rattlesnake. You might be stung by a scorpion. The last thing you want to do as a man when you're stung or when the lady is stung is be like a deer in the headlights, stuck. You don't know what to do. You've never come across such experiences before, and you don't know who to call. This is partly why I say to young men, marriage is not for you. You haven't tried yet. A lot of the things I share in these sessions come from my experiences. Why? Because I've done a few things once, done many things twice, and there are so many more things that I've done multiple times. I've failed like you've never seen. I've had my ups and I've had my downs. I've had times when I've said to myself, you've got to be beyond belief. You've got to be an idiot. How could you have made such a stupid decision? I can invest life into life now. Why? Because I failed. Now, mostly I was comforted between 30 and 35 by the fact that I did not have a family of my own, and I wasn't married, and I had no kids. That gave me the opportunity to fail without the feeling that I had to give up on that dream for another. So a lot of the things that I share, whilst they might not seem to be, I guess, your cup of tea, look out for what you might think could work for you, and make it work to the best of your ability. In summary, age gap dating is understandably something to consider, whether you are in the dating marketplace or relationship marketplace. As you transition from the dating marketplace to the relationship marketplace, you must ensure that you apply some form of age gap dating, for a number of reasons, as I've alluded to. In the short term, you might find that it doesn't make a difference. We test the integrity of things that are created under what we call periods of depression, not periods of prosperity. At the early stage of a relationship, you still have the butterflies and it's the honeymoon phase and you're excited. It's 5 years down and 6 years down when someone loses a loved one, when you failed, you've been fired from work, when nothing seems to be working for both of you, when the kids are sick. It takes some level of fortitude and resolve and stamina for both of you to support each other. There is nothing so pitiful as a woman who doesn't understand her womanhood and always looks to her husband like father. Likewise, there's nothing so disgusting as a man who hasn't discovered his manhood and always looks to his wife or partner as mother. You need some element of maturity, and age gap dating allows, especially the younger you are, allows the couple in question, assuming they want a relationship, to allow each other grace through time. Grace through time. If I kept asking for more grace every day from you, at some point you will be exhausted and have nothing to give. Time is a gift to you or to me, but that time gift is grace. In other words, the universe is giving to the relationship grace through time by ensuring that the age gap between both of you is something that was invested wisely to learn, to develop, to become someone who can lead the right way. Now, I hope that's been useful.